Chat series. I am your host, Meg Kruger. I am the content lead with Pioneer Athletics. Today, I am joined by my coworker and my co-host, Weston Apfeller, and he is going to introduce our guest, who is joining us from allergy season, as he tells us, over there in Michigan. And we planned to harass him by wearing Ohio State clothing, and we dropped the ball. So if you're not on YouTube and you're just listening to this, then you wouldn't have known the difference. But if you're tuning in on YouTube, like so many of our listeners and viewers do, you'll see that we missed the ball to harass him. So this is just me putting it in stone that we wanted to harass Jason and we dropped the ball.
If they're not watching us, Meg, you could have went with it. We are completely wearing it. So
True.
Meg's actually dressed up in her Brutus Buckeye outfit.
Exactly.
Crazy.
I did an entire, musical number before we press record. So you'll have to tune in for that. But Weston, I will stop my rambling now and turn it over to you so you can properly introduce our guest.
Well, thanks, Meg. Our guest today is probably one of the most naturally funny people I've ever met. He's a military man that comes to us from the beautiful state that is pure Michigan. I'd like to welcome the sports turf specialist from the University of Michigan, Mr. Jason DeMink. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Nice. No pressure on the funny thing. You got to drop some lines on us here. So
I will do my best. I will try.
All right. So the first question we like to dive into isn't on the script that we sent you. And
Perfect.
As groundskeepers, we often get extremely busy and lose track of what the main focus is in our life. So I'd like to ask you, starting off, what do you like to do when you're outside of work? Who do you like to do it with? And we'll start from there.
So, like most typical people around my age, I have kids. So what I like to do after work and what I do in my spare time are two totally different things. I help coach my son's baseball team. By coach, I mean I sit on a bucket and do game changer. He's far out past any baseball knowledge I have, but where I work, I can get him knowledge. So that's worked out well. Spent a lot of time with my family. My daughter's a golfer, so I golf with her a lot. And if you haven't got your butt kicked by a 15-year-old, it's kind of humiliating. And even if I'm playing from the forward tees with her, she's still out driving me. So that's money well spent as I look at it. And then I like to spend time with my wife. So
nice.
And sitting on a porch.
That's cool. How long have you been married?
23 years. So yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, been a while. Met her when she was going to school here. I was getting out of the Navy. I was balding. I was fat. So I knew I had, and I'm funny, so I knew I had to land a wife. So I worked on it for about 3 months. I fooled her. I tricked her into it. So yeah.
As many women are, it's the truth. Weston, how long have you been married?
We'll hit 19 years this August.
Okay,
so
very
been together
cool.
26. Yeah, so since we were 14.
Crazy.
That's cool.
Got in real early.
Yeah.
That wasn't even funny then. But
wow.
Yeah, that's a special kind of charm.
Small town. I was the only one not related to her, so
that's incredible.
I'm not saying I'm not alluding to Ohio, backwoods Ohio.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, I mean, I love that your daughter is a golfer. We should definitely get her involved in the women in turf team then, because we do a lot of cool golf events, and that could be a nice segue if she had any interest in, even if she's not interested in sports turf as a profession, it's a cool thing to be a part of for sure.
Yeah, she has aspirations a lot higher than mine, and then even my wife. So yeah, she wants to work in finance. So, I mean, I will be very happy if this comes to fruition. So she promised me a 1973 Cadillac Eldorado, and I'm going to hold her up to that. So
Good,
yeah,
as you should. I love that. So, we heard your turf origin story. I know Weston had already known it, But for those who didn't tune into our Daytona series, what is that turf origin story? How did you find a home within this industry?
So I did some time in the Navy, a little over 4 years. I got out of the Navy. I was basically looking for something to do, looking for some direction again in my life. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what I wanted to do. I went to school for this, went to school for that. Uh, got married, tricked her into marrying me. We moved out to Boston. She went to grad school out there. I was working for Terminex and shuffling back and forth through the country, following my wife around because that was a company that you could transfer with.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally came home one day after a very bad roach job, and I got to figure out something. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I
Yeah.
was making good money, but yeah, roaches in hair. I know it's funny. The roaches in my hair, um, that really sealed the deal. And that's
Yeah.
the last day I had hair. So I shaved the rest of it off that day, and I went to Michigan State and I got a degree in what is it, commercial and sports turf grass management. It's not even a degree there anymore. I think it's just golf or it's just turf grass management now. And then yeah, Boston and then to here. So it's been a pretty good run. I've been here for a long time. So I've been here, this is I think my 17th season.
Wow.
So I'm on the downward slope here.
So you must like something about it to stay with it that long.
Oh, I love what I do for a living, for sure. I like that nothing is ever the same.
Mm-hmm.
Even before this podcast today, I was 3 feet in a hole fixing an irrigation break that I really didn't want to fix and get dirty because I knew I needed the top half of me to look halfway decent. The bottom half is covered in mud. Uh, and then we have a game later. So I mean, I literally came from the hole to come sit on the Zoom. Uh, that's not my favorite thing to do, but
Of course.
when
But
it
better
has to
than
get done,
roaches.
yeah, better than roaches. Yeah, and it has to get done. So it, I can't really trust so many people to do so many things, and that's if I don't have a great intern or a great staff on staff, which longer I've been here, the less staff we get,
Mm-hmm.
it's more difficult. So yeah, I do a lot of stuff hands on myself, just adjusting hours.
Of course. That should be a new series for us, Weston, is asking people, where did you come from?
Mm.
Like, what task did you just leave in order to hop on the mic? And I'm sure we'd get some interesting,
This
some
is great
interesting
relief.
stories.
This is great relief from being in the hole right now. So I
Good.
mean, yeah, I'm not a fan of being wet all day.
Well, if that's all we accomplished today, then it's a success in my book. But something I'm interested in is a lot of people that are in the military, something that a huge positive of it is that camaraderie or that brotherhood, that family like nature that you get when you're in the service. Have you found any similarities like that in the turf industry, or can you see any parallels between the military and the turf industry?
Uh, so yes, I've found that here. It seems like every time we get a good group of people, they're more like family. I spend more
Mhm.
time with them than I do my own family. So now that I'm older, it's almost like they're my children, which is weird. Instead of like, I never would say I'm anybody's boss. We're co-workers. If I'm not doing it, then you shouldn't do it. If I haven't done it, then there's no way I expect you to do it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's the camaraderie is there for sure. I don't dread coming to work ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not a job. It is not a job. I come to work and it's fun. It's always been fun, and I think if it stops being fun, then I might as well go get a job that pays a lot more, and that is a job. And it's not, fun is most important. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I try to
Terminex.
keep, yeah, Terminex wasn't fun. Um,
But
but
it pays more.
if it paid more, yeah, back then it did. Um, but and I think I keep that camaraderie going. So when I go back to a SFMA or if
Mm-hmm.
we have a Michigan local one, I mean, I see a group of people that sometimes work for me, but like Weston followed me, and it's just like being back with brothers and sisters again. So it's that camaraderie doesn't stop. And then like there's a lot of texting that goes back and forth, and a lot of jabbing and all day long. So you can wake up and you've missed 170 texts because again, I'm older than most of them. So
I love it.
Who do you text the most? Who's your turf
me,
grass texting?
uh me, Steve Lord, DeMay, Muntz, a lot of Ohio State guys, and a few Spartans. Mitch over at the Whitecaps because we're pretty tight. Uh, yeah, it all depends.
Nice.
I mean, it's always something new, or someone has a question to bounce off of. Hey, did you use this product or not? And I enjoy that aspect. If I can actually help somebody, that's always the best part. Or if I'm like, yeah, I would never use that, but I would never say what the product was. So
Yeah.
Love that. That sounds like a group chat that
yeah,
Weston would want to be a part of.
yeah. He hasn't.
Actually, I was.
He
It has to
was.
be out of it.
He had to get rid of it.
Nice. You were like, please remove it. I cannot handle 170 text
Yep.
messages in the morning.
Yeah, I sometimes I just scroll back to see if my name is mentioned. If it's not, then I'm like, all right, that's a wash for the day. I'm good.
That's great.
Start different. But yeah, it's been pretty good. And then we just other former interns of mine, we all keep in touch. So that's the most important part. So I feel like it's family instead of yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've used to describe the turf industry, especially people that have been in it for so long, like they each have their own family tree. But now I think it's more like a spider web because it's like there's so many different avenues, like so many different connections. And that's definitely, especially 17 seasons, you're bound to have a tree, a web, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, oh for sure. It's funny you say that. We're thinking about doing a talk, me and a couple former interns, and see if it gets picked up by SFMA. But basically the same thing, like a family tree. But like my roots go down not as far because I started later in life, and
Mm-hmm.
basically I owe it to like three people. So Jason Griffith at the Red Sox, Dave Meller, and then Trey Rogers. So those were like that's where I started off, the root of my origin. So, but the extension now is pretty huge. So it feels good that like some of the things that I taught them that they're using, but also that the ones that came through my internship, majority are very successful, more successful for me, and that makes me feel really good and bad at the same time. So either way,
I love it.
yeah.
And I feel like and correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time I met you, you were with Matt Tobin and Pete Tebow, correct?
I was with Matt,
Okay.
Tim, and Brad Finn was there.
Yep.
So yeah,
Okay.
Brad came
Okay.
through our program from UMass, and Brad worked here twice. Great guy, knows a lot of stuff. Probably majority of the kids that come through here, I guess they're not kids anymore. They're probably all 30. End up knowing more than me. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just I don't want to say I'm a dinosaur when it comes to newer stuff, but I feel like I am. I always feel like I'm playing catch up, um, just because of age and life responsibilities. So I don't always have time to sit there and thumb through a, a magazine or something like, oh, this is what this person is actually doing, and it's just like, so
Well, yeah, you have 170 text messages to read every
well,
morning.
yeah. So I lean on people. I lean on people who I know to like, hey, is this a great thing or not? So, uh, and it also helps that you have some professors that you're friends with because they usually lead you down the right direction because they usually don't have a vested interest in whatever you're asking.
Certainly.
So you've been there for 17 years, you said. And,
17
you had some
seasons, 16 years.
17. Okay.
Yeah,
So
seasons,
you had
15
some,
years.
that is true.
Yeah.
You have you had some experience before that. How have you seen the evolution go of the turf industry since you started to now?
Since I've been here, everything has gone to the synthetic way for the most part. My staff has decreased. Automation has taken over. We have a robot painter. It is saves us labor, time, man hours tremendously. We have it do just about everything besides our softball field, which I still do by hand because I want to be able to do something. But at the same time, if you can have someone just program, plug and play and go, and it's done. Our university is going all electric, so we're always looking to change our equipment now, which is scary for me because I want to make sure they plug stuff in at the end of the night. And that's a risk. I'm like, well, if they run out of diesel, I just have to prime something. But if they run out of, and now I'm waiting and the time windows crunch. I would think the science has definitely evolved, knowing more cultural practices, even than what I was taught so many years ago, and more the advancement of like certain chemicals and plant growth regulators that really wasn't a thing when I went through school. I mean, they talked about a little bit, but the way we use them now is tremendous. So I mean, I use that for cost cutting, for paint saving, all the above. That's probably the biggest thing for me is PGRs.
Definitely. And as far as the technology evolution goes, have you been included in those conversations when decisions have been made, or is that something that you've been asked to adjust to, or just kind of, roll with the punches as things were being decided on?
So all the above.
Okay.
So a lot of times my input is received and not used, like most things at universities. It all comes down to strategic vendors a lot. And then in Michigan athletics, we have someone who, I don't even know what they are. They're a marketing,
Hmm.
so we pay them money. So I would love to get like a deal where I just lease stuff and change it over, but I have a dilapidated fleet. I mean, I'm using a mower that is, I think it's 13 years old. I mean, I got zip ties holding it together. I mean, runs like a top, but it's time, and it it just it's just time. Like sometimes things are just too old, and then now we're at this spot where do we buy an electric, and the electric big mowers aren't there yet for what we need and the price point where we want to be.
Hmm.
Um, and until I think that comes down, I think we'll just keep our mechanic very busy and very unhappy with us.
Do you have a mechanic on staff?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we have two. University owns two golf courses,
Okay.
and there's one between me and the soccer, and there's a mechanic there, and he's been there for 20 something years. And he'll come over and he's like, "This is new compared to the stuff they're using."
Oh,
And they have
wow.
two very nice golf courses. And he's like, "No, I don't want your mower because it's a piece." So
Love
it
it.
just, yeah. And I probably have less hours, but yeah, I mow a lot more than I'd have to say than I mow more than they do, besides the tees and greens. Um, but yeah, it all depends. If we really need it, if I really, really need it, I have to go through football, and then they usually don't get told no because football pays for all. So it's just the philosophy of the world. If
Ain't
football
that the
wants it,
truth?
football can have it.
So then that brings me to my next question. So give us an overview of what you're managing, because it maybe sounds like football has its own crew. Is that what you're saying?
No, so I take care of football, baseball, and
Okay.
softball. And then we have a younger guy who just graduated, Billy Marin. He came from Purdue, and he takes care of the soccer fields down there.
Okay.
He does a pretty good job. When he first started, like most new grads, you're there with him constantly. And I think he was only on the job maybe a month and a half or something like that, and he broke his ankle playing soccer. So then
Fun.
my intern and I basically took over for him. So yeah, my intern is going to go work for him because he wants more soccer experience until he can find a full-time job. So I'm very happy that Billy has someone who he can depend upon, because if once you come through me, you better be trained, because my name is on your is like a signature on you. So I want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure, like, hey, if I'm calling up Ryan for the Patriots, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
guy's worthwhile, or anybody, like, because if my friend, I don't want him, like, or Kiermaier, if I'm calling him up, I want to make sure this person is worthwhile, because I'm like, I don't want to send someone like, I can't believe you sent me that person, and then I lose the trust of someone who I'm friends with, and I don't. That's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that goes to the whole family tree aspect.
Definitely. No, there's definitely that level of accountability
Yeah.
in the industry because, yeah, it's you would never want to break
That
that trust, but then also just have people go, well, what the hell are they doing over there? That
It's always the toughest conversation when you have an intern who you have to sit down and say, this line of work really isn't for you. And I I've had to do it a couple times, and I always feel bad, but they seem to be more successful in their next, and they're thankful for it, because most people will sugarcoat everything, and I just can't. I'm like, this isn't for you. You're destined for something else, something more. Uh, I had Tyler Carter come for an interview once, and I told him no, because he was destined for more. I'm like, you can't come here and work for me. And look how great that guy's done. I mean, I think he works for Toro now, but I mean, he's long surpassed coming out of this program, working up at the stadium, and then yeah. So it just you can just see it. Some people are just in it forever, and some people are destined for something else.
Isn't it funny how that works? I had Danny Lucido apply for a job years ago with me, and it was the same thing. Is you're going to be something like really soon.
Yeah.
Stay your course of where you're at, and you're going to like get there. And he certainly did. So, and that's even funner to watch is when you see somebody like that, and you were honest with them.
And you're interviewing and you're like, wow, this person far surpasses me. There's nothing I can teach this person. I'm just not going to use them as general labor because I want them to learn something. And I'm like, maybe I could learn something from them. And then that's kind of scary. But no.
Now, how at what stage in your career did you like decide that, all right, I'm going to be straightforward. I'm going to tell them how it is, because there is a comfort level, when you're first getting going, of dancing around things, to then getting to a stage where it's like, I'm going to be brutally honest, and this is what it is.
uh, I gotta say probably 2011. So I was probably in 5 years, something about that time, or 4 years here. Somewhere, yeah, around there. So in the industry in whole. It helps that I was an ex-military guy. We have to be brutally honest all the time. There's no sugarcoating for the most part. Feelings, I mean, as terrible as said, they're your problem, not mine. But
Mm-hmm.
I do have a big heart, so sometimes I'm like, I feel bad, like I'll lose sleep over something like that. But at the same time, yeah, it was about 5 years, and the kid that I told that to is doing extremely well. I believe he owns a giant house on Nantucket. So I'm very glad that he did not stick with in the industry, because he wasn't cut out for labor. He just wasn't. And this is a labor of love for sure. If you're not, until my body can't go anymore, I will probably stick doing this.
Love that. Well, that leads me to my next question, which is really the core of this chat. And, you definitely alluded to having struggles with labor and, getting people that may not be the best fit and attracting them, from the get-go. So we really want to get your take on how, your point of view, and how do you believe stepping into the spotlight or kind of garnering attention for our industry can kind of help with those issues. Getting the people that, dipping into unique labor pools like ex-military, like athletes that maybe want to stay in the game? How can we kind of garner attention for our industry by stepping into the spotlight so that we can combat those issues, misconceptions, labor, everything like that?
So I think the ex-athlete aspect is great, especially in the college world, because I always say to everybody, if you want to stay in the sport, this is the way to do it.
Yep.
This is really a way to do it. And there's a lot of ex-athletes that are in sports field management. Um, and I think that starts at that kind of square root with the groundskeeper there, talking to the student athletes. You're like, well, you're not going to cut it, but you might be able to cut this. And a lot of those kids like to come work for you if they
Mm-hmm.
can. And then you can tell right then or there, like, are they just here for a check because they're a D1 athlete, or they actually want to learn something? Ex-military, there's this transition back to civilian life classes,
Mm-hmm.
and if that was a way we could tap into those, because it's like 3 months before you you get out, that you go to these classes to basically teach you how to be a civilian again.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely forget how to be a civilian. You don't think you do, but you do. And like, I think that would be a place that we could probably get into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would be ideal, because a lot of the men and women, they're used to getting up early and doing hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't mind being dirty. It's just that kind of job. And I think the reward aspect of that is why you could get them, because you can see what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're working behind a desk, you can't tell what you've done for the day. Like, if I had a day inside, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I did anything today. Uh, but yeah, it's hard for to say, because I know what they're doing at Brentsville is awesome. I just don't see that program in Michigan anywhere. Um, it'd be pretty cool if that was in a vocational aspect, but it all turns down to the same thing. If we don't pay more, you're not going to get people into the industry. So it took a while to get where I'm at. And I I know most kids who graduating college think they should be making $100,000 right away and without any experience. And I'm just like, that's just not the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
And if it did, that'd be great, but that means I'd be making a lot more and I'd be very happy. So
Well, yeah,
yeah.
and it's tough to, because yeah, like my eyeballs go out when I hear $100,000, but when you're pairing it with the student loan debt that they're probably looking at, it's like, they're probably just seeing that like I've got to pay that off and somehow live as well. And one of the themes that really came out of the conference was the idea of, making giving a step into this career that doesn't include college, that
Yeah.
maybe includes right out of high school, those jobs that, you can justify making a little less because you're not having to, also pay for student loans alongside that. What's your take on that?
I kind of look at the job as like a skilled labor job, kind of like a plumber or a electrician, somewhere in that aspect, where it could be like that kind of on the job or vocational training, where then you can make money right out. So
Mm-hmm.
and I, in a weird thing, I would love to see Mike Rowe come to one of our things,
Oh, that
because
would be really
he
cool.
supports all that kind of initiative.
Mm-hmm.
I had a kid that came through here and he actually got that scholarship on something that I wrote for him, to be a HVAC guy. But
Very cool.
I think if we could get someone with that kind of name recognition to talk about it, I think that could be a long way. And it could be just a 2-year vocational thing. And then it is a skilled trade. There's no doubt in my mind. Like, you just mow grass. No, like, I walk out, I see a disease, and you don't see, the common person doesn't see that. The kid the guy who just came out of college for a sports management degree doesn't see that. They see grass. They don't see wheat grass. They just see, oh, it's green. It looks all right. And then you're running through the scenarios in your head like, oh, that looks terrible. How am I gonna get this? And then you're gonna And I think that's the trick. I really think it should be considered a skilled trade.
Well, in different
And then
avenues to access, you know, for people that want to access it through a turf program for sure, like still having that available, but you know, finding other ways for people to access it so that we can have them, you know, join, but then also keep them engaged throughout. And sorry, Weston, you had a thought. I cut you off there.
No, I think you bring up a good point is even if you don't go to school, there's a way to get into it and then use, different elements as you go up through to gain that experience. So just thinking right off the bat, even going through school, I didn't learn very much in business. But so much of the job is business oriented that you pick
Hmm.
up along the way. That there's different classes or different ways of learning as you go through your career that need to be shared with a younger person coming into your organization where like it sounds like Jason has taught them everything as they go through his program.
I
How
did.
much of your time is taught with that side, the business elements that go with
Hmm.
this versus just the groundskeeping side?
Well, that's a tough one. So being at a university, I don't want to say there isn't a budget, but there's a budget, but it's very loose. So, God, I don't even know. Maybe 15%. I more focus on growing as a person than as just as a groundskeeper. The first thing I say to any new kid who comes to me, I said, "Do you have a Roth IRA already?" And if they say no, I'm like, "Well, you better put $500 in that right now and forget about it and just add $50, like it doesn't even exist." Why? Because in your life, when you retire, it will be paid for. If I knew that back when I was in the military, I
Hmm.
wouldn't be so far behind. So that's the first thing anybody who comes to work for me, I'm like, and they're young, I'm like, I'm hounding on them. I'm like, and I actually hound on them enough so they actually do it because I want them to have when they're 65 and they're sitting on 3 million because they invested $500 or something when they're 18 and they just added a little bit to it. Like they'll look back and like, man, Jay was right. And like, I mean, I'll be long dead, but at least, but yeah, I think that's
I,
more my aspect is I try to prepare them for the other part of life. I
Hmm.
tell them how things cost and how our budget works. I try to let them look at the numbers and see what they think. But again, budgets are meant to be broken, and if you kind of always have to go over so you get more. So
Yeah,
I
it's a fun balance that you have to try and figure out for sure.
yeah.
Well, so when we think about, you know, I mean, every season in the college realm has a big cultural event. Like there's always a championship, or there's the bowl games, or there's that end of the year, you know, there's that culmination at the end of the season. Um, how do you think that we could kind of capitalize on that event as an industry to just bring more attention to us? You know, it's we talk, you know, you see with like the Rose Bowl every year, there's an article that goes out that gets lost in space where it's like, oh, you know, they bring in fresh grass every year for, you know, and it's that routine that we're in where it's just like, oh, the one article, great, somebody's talking about it. But how do we really capitalize it on it further so that we can help with those misconceptions, help with those labor issues, move these ideas that we all kind of talk about when we're together at SFMA or whatever, really push that needle forward?
So the way I look at it, I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and this one's near and dear to my heart. So I watch a lot of golf because I like looking at grass.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you watch a golf, and you have the designer, the architect, and the
Yep.
superintendent, and sometimes there's assistant superintendents. That should be on every sporting event, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what. Like, yeah, you can have who designed the field, fine, but you should have the groundskeeper or the director or whatever it is. Also, if they're not interviewed, kind of like you see all superintendents are always seem to be talking to Jim Nance or whoever. They seem to
Yep.
have a conversation. We don't have that conversation with those people. And I think just that little sideline talk would make a world of a difference, that could be construed, and they could convey what we do a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
than what is seen. Everybody looks at us only when something bad happens.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part. They can't, oh, it looks great, nothing bad happens, so it's okay. But if
Mm-hmm.
something bad happens, it's always seems to be our fault. And that's a tough rub. And I also think that's comes from the announcers in being poorly educated. It would be
Mm-hmm.
nice if we could educate them. And I think that step is just the meet and greet, and like, hey, just so they know what's going on. Um, but yeah, I would love to see someone's name at the bottom of the screen, and not just a rain delay, and like you see them at the top of the steps with a phone or something like that, or looking at radar and like, oh, they're stressed out. Yeah, they're stressed out and they're thinking about weather, but what took all that to even take the rain that it's taken right now?
Yeah.
So without the little thing in the corner, and that little thing would go a long way, um, I believe.
And you really just hit on the bread and butter of this topic, and why we're really exploring it is because it has been done in the golf industry. And how can we replicate that over here and make sure that we get that visibility as our sports turf industry embarks on something like the World Cup? Embarks on Super Bowls where we're finally comfortable stepping into the spotlight a little bit more. How do we really, and I think you're right, unfortunately, it's not just something that we can do. It's about educating the announcers. It's about, you know, making ourselves appealing or interesting to the people that have, the microphones or have the stories already going. So yeah, how we can get there. It sounds like you guys need Meg Kruger to become a publicist for the groundskeeping
I mean,
industry. That's a full-time job right there, like
I,
really.
I couldn't think of a better person. So
I put it in
um,
my Twitter bio a few weeks ago. I was like, I'm gonna manifest this, that one day I'm just good. That's gonna be my job, is just being on the sideline of big events and being like, you people need to snap into
I
attention,
mean,
focus on us.
ideally, even if it's with the sideline reporter, and like just mentioned right there, like, yeah, this is the surface we're using, or it could
Yeah,
be for synthetic, or we're using this X surface or this surface for this game. And then it could be very minute, but that would go a long way in promoting. And then ideally, which is weird to say, if you give that little bit of fame to any one of those people, someone who's watching it on TV, some kid's like, oh, I can do that. It'd
yeah,
be pretty cool. So, I mean, I think that just a little bit.
yeah.
And it's not like we're in the racket to get rich, but I mean, and you work behind the scenes constantly. But a
Mm-hmm.
little recognition would go a long way in our industry, and I think it would go a long way for recruitment too.
For sure. And I think, for anybody listening, it's very easy to be like, well, that's not my battle, or I don't know how I would do that. But really, each groundskeeper can cultivate that kind of, recognition within their own organization. And that really starts with your user groups. And whether that's a flyer that you send out at the start of the year to all the parents who are going to have kids playing on your rec softball field that year, and saying, hey, this is why we don't leave the dugouts trashed. And it's like, oh, then the parents thinking further, oh, well, yeah, I guess there is somebody that does that as a job. And what else do they do? Oh, they rebuild mounds after a big tournament, or they're on the business side of organizing, a huge Memorial Day tournament, just getting the conversation started and heading in the right direction. I think that's something that we really miss the opportunity to do, is direct these conversations in the direction that benefits us. If you just leave it for the parents or the user groups or the announcers or the Twitter sphere of letting them dictate the conversations, it's just going to continue to go negative. We really have to grab it and take a hold of it and direct it in the direction. How many times did I just say the word direction? Surely in the last 2 sentences, but really directing it into the way that is going to benefit us as a whole.
Yeah, we should definitely direct the narrative.
Exactly.
That's, I guess that's important. I probably could do a little bit better here, even where I work. They've interviewed me for a couple things, but it's not like, and we have our own PR department. We have our own writers. I know them all, but I never really ask for much. So I really not been so much in the limelight. A couple times they'll announce your name on Big Ten Network or something if you've done something, but yeah, usually it's there's me in the background and it's raining and I'm standing there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
or barking out orders, which is the worst one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you can find that limelight in different groups where you're comfortable. Maybe that's with like the coaches, being able to talk to coaches about the necessity or the things that you enjoy about the job. Or again, maybe it's the student athletes, or maybe it's the game day crew. There's so many different audiences that you can reach where because I'm sure there's a ton of groundskeepers at the university level, at the major league level, that maybe aren't even given that opportunity to be talked to by the PR team or the media relations. So just finding that audience that you're comfortable with and that you can really share their profession. Because again, if you gain visibility in your own organization, or you get a seat at the table within your own organization, that's just creating that seat for the next guy that comes. Something I say all the time is like, visibility for one groundskeeper is, it spreads just like that family tree. It only creates visibility for us all as a whole. So the one small thing you do will have an impact, I believe.
100%. So yeah.
Preaching
Wow.
to the choir there with the two of you. You're like, yeah, we agree.
I have supervisors that go on benchmarking with teams, and they go places and then they come back and like, hey, do you know that they do this here? And I'm like, yeah, we actually talk all the time. So like we have like a Big Ten email group that we all
Very cool.
go back and forth through, because a lot of times rules are changed and one of us knows and no one else knows. So that's kind of how sometimes you find out about stuff.
Trade secrets.
Yeah. It's not even trade secrets. It's like if a new rule in softball changes or something, like no one sits you down and tells you about it. You have your preseason meetings with softball, but they're not gonna, or baseball, wherever, they're not gonna tell you anything has changed. Like it's not on their mind. The field is not on their mind usually, for the most part. It all depends. If you have a lot of clay, though, sometimes it's on their mind.
Love it. Weston, any follow-up questions? I rambled over you for which, it's becoming a theme here.
No, you have a lot of direction, Meg. You know what you're going towards. So
the last couple chats when I've gone back and edited, I'm like, poor Weston. I make him sit outside and all he gets to ask 1 or 2 questions, and then I'm just off to the races.
it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
I mean, he's a color commentator. It's exactly it.
Yes.
Good job.
Perfect. Well, Jason, I really appreciate the time. I appreciate you sharing thoughts. I hate to turn you loose because I think that, you're going to have to return to the hole, unfortunately. Unless you think they've somehow managed to fix the irrigation problem over the last hour.
No, it's just filling the hole. It's
Good.
I already fixed it. It's just filling the hole. So
good.
I just threw a cone over a 3-foot hole. That should work. I mean, they're college students, so and they're Michigan students, so the chances they fall in that hole are pretty good.
Yep. You come back to a crime scene, really.
There's not. I mean, that's one thing they don't teach here is common sense. So it seems like that generation doesn't have any.
The Michigan State side's coming out in him. So
yeah, a little bit. maybe a little bit.
You got to keep the fire within you. It's what gets you up in the morning, you know?
I have one thing for Michigan State, and it's a Michigan State Turf Grass Club sweatshirt. And that is all I have from my time at Michigan State. And I won't get rid of it. It is 3 sizes too big since I lost all that weight. But I mean, like, just like an old blanket. I can't get rid of it.
I love it.
No.
Something to aspire to, you know? You can always fill back out.
No, I don't want to. Oh, no. This way, 50 looks better than 40. So that's the
Good.
best part. So
Good. Well, thank you again. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your point of view. And I think we'll turn you loose. Any last thoughts, Weston?
No, I did have one last question. Since we both work for the Red Sox, there's been, a few different assistants there, and they've taken a ranking. Do you know where you rank as far as assistant groundskeepers there?
in like personality or in like
Overall,
work
just experience. I heard the crew created this master list. I wanted to know if you knew where you ranked.
I don't know where I rank. I would think I'm probably 10th on the bottom.
Ooh, okay.
I
I don't
What
know
about you,
either.
Weston?
I have
Are
a
you
question.
number one?
It's probably
I'm two. I'm two is what I hear. So
Who's number one?
I had it up. I'm trying to figure out where this went here. Hold on a second.
Oh,
This
there's
is
like
great
they have
radio.
it in like they
Oh
have
no,
it in
I'm
stone.
number one. The guy at
Nice.
Wake Forest is number two. Yep.
What
And
a convenient
the
question to
current people
bring
there are
up, huh,
11 and 12.
Jason? He's
Yeah.
number
Yeah, I
one.
was just I'm number one. Oh, weird. I didn't know that.
he was there.
So-
He was there longer than I was, for sure.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he was there. You were there for 3 years, right?
Yeah, 3.5. Yeah.
3.5. Yeah. So I was only there for 1. So yeah.
We'll let you have that spot.
I mean, but we still have friends that still work there, which is ridiculous. So there's some guys that have been on that crew for, it seems, 30 years. So
Yep.
yeah,
Someone's got to do it, right?
well, yeah, I mean, they're season ticket holders. We're talking about you, Teach, and Pato, if they ever watch this.
Yeah. I know. I appreciate you, Jason, and thank you. We've been friends for, I don't know, a number of years now, but it was shared brotherhood of misery stories from past experiences in life that we, grew a bond. And I appreciate you being on, and thank you for this. So
I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Craig O'Berry for being my guy here. So and turning me on into this and introducing me to you, Meg. So
That's awesome.
I
Yeah,
mean,
Craig's a fan favorite.
I
for
lean
sure.
on Craig a lot, and I mean, he's not just a strategic partner. I mean, he is a true friend. And yeah, so if I can't thank him enough. So, and everybody who's worked for me through the past or worked with me, everybody's meant a lot. So everybody's left a little bit with me and who they are. And that's important to me. So, because, once I'm gone, as I said, when they hit 65 and I'm dead, I want them like, oh yeah, Jay was right. He was right.
I love that. Look at that, leaving us with all the warm and fuzzy feelings here at the end of the Groundskeeper chat.
I'm not just a hard, mean, miserable, fun guy. So.
Well, yeah, hopefully a few of you made it to the end to hear that, because that was something special. Otherwise, we'll have to edit it and put it right at the start.
Then you're gonna give Craig a giant head, and he already has a big one. He wears it size 8. So
that's incredible. Well, thank you again,
Thank
sir. We'll
you.
definitely be talking soon.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.